You just gotta learn to live with it, he told me, like I was asking for spare change. I left his house feeling the words like a fist in my chest. 3 months later, I had the same equipment he swore would make me fail, and I used it to bury him. If you're the kind of person who loves seeing a crooked bully get what's coming, hit subscribe. Smash that like button if you believe people should pay for what they do. And stick around. This one's for anyone who's ever been cheated, underestimated, or ignored by someone who thought friendship gave them a free pass. My name is Daniel Prescott. I was 42 that winter, a landscaper by trade and stubbornness. For 9 years I ran a small company in the Pacific Northwest. 4 guys through the season, a handful of steady maintenance accounts, a mortgage we'd paid down, student loans behind me, and a kid who asked too many questions about how trees grow. We worked March through November and shut down in December like clockwork. The winters were for refueling, planning, and if I'm honest, nursing the itch to build something bigger. In 2008, a local home builder, call him Tom, got wind of our work. He built big, ugly, beautiful houses. 3,500-ish was small for him. 8,000 to 10,000 square foot homes on acreage that made my jaw drop. He liked how clean our installs looked, how we treated a lawn like a customer's living room. He asked us to bid on some installs. We did 4. They weren't cookie cutter. They were temperamental, detail-heavy, and perfect for a crew that cared about how things finished. I thought we were on the up and up. December came and my maintenance revenue slowed. Tom pulled me aside and offered winter work, but not landscaping. He and his son were getting into spray foam insulation. The equipment to do it properly, high-dollar rigs, pumps, tanks, ran around $100,000. He wanted to keep my guys working, promised steady pay for 3 months, and said his pipeline would hold. I asked around, weighed the risk. I told my crew we'd give it a shot. The deal was inked. At first it felt like a new language. The insulation smell, sharp and chemical, a sting at the back of the throat, replaced the earth-sweet smell of fresh soil and cut grass. The boss on site wasn't Tom. It was his son, younger than me, slicker, with the kind of confidence that slides into disrespect. He barked orders. I swallowed my pride and did what any contractor does, make the job work. The son and I tolerated each other. Tom, I saw him maybe twice in 3 months. Money started getting fuzzy. As an independent, my normal rhythm was bills and checks on a monthly loop. Predictable delays were part of the business. But by the end of the first month, there was no check. I called. Tom shrugged. Once the invoice is clear, you'll get paid. I fronted pay to my guys because a promise is only worth as much as the men who depend on it. For a while, I believed in the handshake. Weeks bled into months. The son's tone shifted from brusque to radio silence. Calls went unanswered. Texts got the little blue read ticks and nothing else. The father, Tom, offered excuses. Slow receivables, mix-ups, you'll get it. Collections on our landscaping invoice, $10,000 plus, sat like a bruise I was trying not to poke. I filed a contractor's lien on that landscape job to ensure we got paid when the house sold. That got me an invitation to lunch. I remember Tom's house that day like a photograph taken through a cracked windshield, a sprawling place with mid-century windows, and a kitchen that could swallow a football team. He'd poured coffee that tasted like it had been reheated too many times. He sat across from me, and instead of apologies, he said, plain and clinical, I've been screwed over in this business before. It's something you learn to live with." The words were salt. My jaw tightened until my molars ached. "I've had people stiff me," I said, "but not friends." He shrugged and folded his hands, as if I was making a fuss about spilled milk. The man who had hired me and trusted my crew, a friendship built over years, had decided that friendship came with a price tag payable by someone else. I didn't storm out. I left with something colder than anger, a plan forming like frost on a windshield. I drove home replaying the conversation, feeling the heat behind my eyes and the slow, mechanical logic of a man who knows the cost of starting over. 2 days later, on May 5th, 2009, I filed the paperwork. I started a spray foam insulation company. Not because I wanted to ruin a life, that would have been petty, but because the market I knew was small and word traveled fast. If people had been burned by Tom and his son, they needed someone who did the job right. I already had crews I trusted. I knew scheduling, logistics, and how to hold a client's confidence. Starting meant buying roughly the same equipment, maybe a year less experience than Tom had, but we'd run it honestly. The first calls came from surprising places. Our material supplier, the one Tom had used, handed us our first job. It was a fix. The notorious plastic surgeon's house, the one Tom's company had botched, needed to be redone. We showed up and smelled the old foam, that off, chemical cloy that sticks in your sinuses. My only real role on that job was prep and cleanup, but I watched every sloppy seam and corner the previous crew had cut. The original company had been sued and lost. That suit cut a neat line through their credibility. Then Fort Lewis called. The government contract Tom thought he'd secured slipped through due to his poor communication. A contractor's sin, worse than a missed deadline. We stepped in and did it right. We operated clean, honest, on budget. We treated each handshake like a contract, and each invoice like a promise. It didn't happen overnight. The son, who had once brushed off my calls, called me after I filed my company paperwork, furious, thin-voiced. "You can't make it here, little landscaper. I'll destroy you." I felt the words like insects crawling under my skin. Threats are just wind unless backed by the ability to hurt you. He had neither. We kept doing the work. We showed up on time. We answered calls. Word is a small animal in trade circles. It noses around for truth. Before long, the rumor wasn't that we were trying to take business. It was that we were fixing what hadn't been fixed. People started calling us the honest crew. That's not arrogance, that's survival. Meanwhile, the market that had supported lavish builds cratered. 2008's housing collapse was not kind to giant custom builders with 4 unsold estates on their books. By mid-2009, Tom's empire was creaking. Bankruptcy papers came. He'd over-leveraged on properties that wouldn't sell. The son tried to tread water. I kept my head down and my crews working. October 2009 was the day a repo man called me like a deus ex machina. He'd found equipment with tires aired down behind a barn on an island. My father-in-law, a retired cop and pie with a face for finding people, had tracked the location and called it in. 2 days after he found the address, I was on the phone with a man hauling a trailer full of gear. Driving to the lot, I felt a strange, shapeless satisfaction. Not giddy joy. No. A slow, humming righteousness, the kind you get when the scales tilt back even. The repo man pulled up and asked where to send the bounty check. I watched him hook straps around pumps and tanks that had once been used to stiff my crew. They were dusty, abandoned, like a dream that had been wrenched loose. I didn't dance on a man's failure. I simply did what any businessman does. I collected what justice and a few contracts had allowed me to claim. We kept the insulation business for 3 years. We did things the right way. We built a reputation off competence and truth-telling. Hungry clients came to us because they were tired of being lied to. In 2012, we were bought out by a larger firm, the kind of exit you don't brag about at family dinners, but it was fair. I kept the landscaping business, too. It still runs today. The men who'd worked for me then still call on good weather days, and sometimes they stop by just to shoot a breeze about how seasons change and what the next year might bring. Was it revenge? In the simplest sense, yes. I started a business to compete with a man who stiffed me, and I did it with better workmanship and better ethics. There's a moral line we don't cross. I didn't lie, steal, or sabotage. I outworked, outfought, and outlasted. That's the kind of retribution that doesn't leave you hollow afterward. The son's threats were hollow because he had nothing but bluster. Tom's bankruptcy was the result of his own decisions. If there's a lesson here, it's this. People underestimate small, steady competence. Landscapers, insulators, carpenters, we work in plain sight. We sweat. We show up when a house needs finishing, when a yard needs healing. You piss off a man who knows how to hold a schedule and how to make the numbers add up, and he can quietly turn your world into a cautionary tale. Vindication isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet roll-up of a trailer, the grind of a winch, the smell of diesel, and a job finally done right. So what did I feel when the repo man called? Relief, yes, and a kind of exhausted peace. It's not the same as triumphal jubilation. When you do business with people, there's always a human ledger. I'd lost money and time. I'd lost trust in a friendship. But I'd also learned how much I could bear and how far I could push a new start. I crushed a crooked operation not by being cruel, but by being competent and honest, and the market eventually rewarded that. If you liked this story, tell me, what's the most satisfying moment of justice you've ever seen? Drop it in the comments. If you've ever been cheated by someone you considered a friend, I want to hear that too, and how you handled it. Like this video if you believe competence should beat corruption. Subscribe for more true stories about people who got their due. Not because they wanted revenge, but because they wouldn't accept being swindled. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.